Video links have become an ordinary feature of court proceedings across Europe. What was once introduced as an exceptional or temporary solution is now embedded in everyday judicial practice. Up until now, this transformation has largely been discussed in practical and administrative terms: efficiency, security, speed, and access to justice. These considerations are undeniably important, yet they do not fully capture what is at stake when trials take place via video link. Alongside questions of legality and procedure sits another equally fundamental question: how can justice be socially accomplished in a trial using video links? This film is primarily designed for legal professionals involved in court proceedings, including judges, prosecutors, defence lawyers, and court staff. All of you play a decisive role in shaping how trials are conducted in practice, particularly when video links are used. At the same time, the film may also be relevant for advanced students, policymakers, judicial administrators, and researchers interested in the operation of contemporary courts. Despite different roles, you all share an interest in understanding how legal procedures are enacted and experienced. Throughout the presentation, my focus will be on professional courtroom practice, what legal professionals do, and how they interact in trials using video links. So after engaging with this film, you will understand trials as social and interactional encounters. You will be able to identify interactional risks in trials using video links. And you will be able to adapt courtroom practices to help facilitate the smooth interactional conduct of proceedings. In this film, we will cover several interconnected themes. First, I will introduce the idea of trials as justice rituals and social encounters, drawing on sociological perspectives. I will then explore what changes when trials move online, including shifts in intersubjectivity and entrainment, before discussing rules, roles, and the professional practices that maintain smooth communication and interactional flow. The starting point for this film is that trials are social encounters, not only legal procedures. Justice is therefore not merely decided through the application of rules, it's performed through interaction. Throughout a trial, participants continuously interpret what is happening around them: who speaks, who listens, how authority is exercised, and how respect is communicated. These interactional cues shape how participants understand their own role and the seriousness of the proceedings. The central question posed in this film is therefore, how can justice be socially accomplished in a trial using video links? There are three key aspects to be considered when answering this question. 1. Establishing virtual justice rituals. 2. Enabling intersubjectivity and entrainment. And 3. Establishing interactional expectations and embedding new practices. These dimensions are closely connected, as weaknesses in one area, such as unclear roles or reduced shared focus, can quickly undermine the others. According to Emil Durkheim, one of the central figures of sociology, rituals are collective practices through which society reaffirms shared norms and moral boundaries. For Durkheim, rituals are not merely symbolic or decorative, but central mechanisms for producing social cohesion and a sense of collective order. The criminologist Meredith Rossner has applied this to courts to show that a trial is not only a legal procedure, but a public event in which society enacts and makes visible its understanding of right and wrong. Through formal roles, ordered interaction, symbols, and a shared atmosphere of seriousness and focus, the trial marks itself as an extraordinary moment that carries moral weight, encouraging participants to recognise decisions as authoritative and justified. The idea of the trial as a justice ritual is well established in social legal research. This body of work highlights that legal authority, fairness, and legitimacy are not only grounded in formal rules, but are continuously produced and reproduced. Some aspects of justice rituals transfer relatively easily to video link settings, such as formal roles, procedural order, professional dress, and certain markers of authority. These elements help to maintain continuity with traditional courtroom practices and signal that the proceedings remain legally and institutionally serious. However, other fuzzier aspects are more difficult to translate, particularly sensory experiences, embodied interaction, and the symbolic presence of the courthouse as a shared space of authority. Place, therefore, continues to matter, even when participation is remote, as it shapes how participants interpret the significance of the event and their own role within. As a result, legal professionals must work more deliberately to produce rather than assume the conditions that sustain justice rituals when proceedings no longer unfold in a shared physical courtroom. Justice rituals also depend on achieving intersubjectivity, a shared understanding among participants of what is happening, what is at stake, and how the interaction should proceed. In physical courtrooms, this shared understanding is routinely achieved through subtle social cues, such as timing, posture, gaze, turn-taking, and shifts in collective attention. These cues enable entrainment or mutual focus, whereby participants become oriented to the same task at the same time. When video links are used, these cues may be reduced, delayed, or distorted. Intersubjectivity and entrainment therefore cannot be taken for granted. They must be actively accomplished through interactional work. This includes, for example, regulating turn-taking verbally rather than relying on embodied cues, checking understanding and attention more frequently, and explicitly recentering participants' focus on the shared task of evaluating evidence. Through such practices, legal professionals can help re-establish a shared orientation to the proceedings and maintain collective attention despite the absence of physical co-presence. In trials using video link, legitimacy, fairness, and authority hinge less on ritual being automatically generated by the courtroom environment and more on the conscious, skilled orchestration of interaction to sustain intersubjectivity and entrainment in digital form. The third theme is interactional expectations and embedding practices. Justice rituals involve distinct roles, rules, and practices, many of which operate implicitly rather than being formally articulated. The sociologist Erving Goffman describes interactions as following implicit traffic rules that organize who may speak, when turns are taken, how interruptions are handled, and how authority and respect are displayed. These interactional expectations thus shape how participants are expected to behave at different moments in the trial. By providing a shared framework for interaction, they help trials run smoothly and guide appropriate role performance among judges, lawyers, and other courtroom actors. At the same time, these implicit rules support participants' sense that the process is orderly, meaningful, and fair, allowing them to recognize the trial as a legitimate and coherent social event rather than a series of disconnected procedural steps. In face-to-face settings, participants learn and follow these rules through shared cues such as spatial arrangements, gaze, posture, and timing. For remote participants, many of these embodied spatial and interactional cues are reduced or absent, making it harder to know when to speak, how to intervene, or how to interpret others' actions. Therefore, in video-linked trials, courtroom rules and the specific roles of everyone may need to be made more explicit rather than assumed. Legal professionals should clearly identify who does what, when, and how, including who has the floor, who is being addressed, and what is expected at different stages of the proceedings. Legal professionals also need to learn how to perform their roles in video-linked settings, not only through formal legal training, but also through an ongoing process of socialization, by observing others, picking up tacit interactional cues, and learning how to do their legal role when they are no longer physically co-located in the same courtroom. This film has approached video-linked trials not primarily as a technical or legal challenge, but as a social and interactional one. Drawing on sociological theories of ritual and interaction, it has shown that trials function as justice rituals in which fairness, authority, and legitimacy are produced through shared practices, roles, and interactional order. When trials move online, the ritual doesn't disappear, but the conditions under which it operates are transformed. Physical co-presence, shared space, sensory cues, and implicit interactional rules are weakened or altered. As a result, role clarity, interaction rules, mutual focus, and communication practices can no longer be taken for granted. Instead, they require explicit articulation and active maintenance, particularly for remote participants who lack access to many of the cues that structure interaction in physical courtrooms. For practical guidance on how to take the considerations covered by this film into account when preparing and conducting virtual trials, see E-ViVi's European Best Practice Recommendations for Remote Hearings in Criminal Court Proceedings with Adult Parties. Thank you for your attention.